So I probably should have taken it into consideration that Hellboy the Crooked Man is only playing in one cinema as part of this massive cinema chain that I go to, and there's only 2 time slots for it. And that's something I should have thought about when purchasing my ticket for it, but I did it anyway. And to ensure that it was not a complete waste of time, let's get a video out of it. So Hellboy is directed by Brian Taylor, and it stars Jack Hesse, Jefferson White, and Adeline Rudolph. So when Hellboy and Joe in this movie are completely derailed off their train after having a massive fight with their cargo, which is a massive arachnid, by the way, they find themselves in a community that is being terrorized pretty much by a witch. And I would say that synopsis is mostly entertaining for the first half of the movie, but somewhere in the middle it gets slightly derailed and starts focusing on this other entity in another dimension, and then it just stumbles its way across the finish line. And sorry to start this review off right with the negatives, but I just gotta say it's really annoying to have a visually pleasing movie with a lot of great shots that look like they could be straight out of a comic book panel, but then for it to also lack so much substance and story. And I gotta say, some of that disappointment does come from Hellboy himself. Jack Hesse does a good job in the movie, I would say. He balances that kind of not giving a shit sort of attitude with tough love that Hellboy has and has portrayed in previous movies very well. But ironically, Hellboy doesn't really seem like he fits in place in this movie. The movie's named after him, but it feels like every other character is somewhat more important or more connected to the wider story that's going on with these witches. On the topic of the title, the Crooked Man doesn't really have much of an impact on the story, nor does he really pose any kind of threat to the characters either. And the story just seems to focus way more on a character called Tom in the movie rather than Hellboy or the Crooked Man. And most of my negatives here with the movie are pretty much just story-based. There's only really 2 negatives other than story ones that I have with the movie, and that has to do with the music and the CGI. Look, the music was good, but it just felt so generic. Like, I feel like I could find that the same tracks that they used in this movie on fucking any kind of royalty-free music site on Google. And I'll be honest, the whole train scene at the start with the CGI, I swear to God, that thing looks straight out of Uncharted 2 on my PS3 on a fucking 1080p monitor. Now, to give credit where credit is due, they do try to hide a lot of the CGI with like shadows and darkness, and they are in very not well lit scenarios and environments where you can get away with some bad CGI, but in the train, they're carrying cargo. It's a massive fucking spider, and the spider jumps out of the train and they follow them, and then you just are kind of following this massive spider that looks super shit, and you're like, oh my God, this looks super shit, and now you're thinking about how shit it looks rather than, oh cool, a massive spider. Now, I'll be honest, this movie missed the mark for sure, but what I like about it the most is the direction they were trying to go in, and that's the fact that they made a horror movie first and a comic book movie second. And I think some of the best comic book movies ever made are actually genre pieces before they are superhero films. Take Winter Soldier, for example. That's an espionage thriller first, and then you just so happen to have fucking Captain America in it. Or even take the first Joker movie, for example. That is a character drama first, and then it just so happens to be about potentially the greatest comic book supervillain of all time. And rather than having every comic book character ever be turned into an action movie, I'd love to see more genre pieces like this, whether it's horror or drama, but please God, not a musical again. And I think it would absolutely work, you know, if you also write a good story for it. Look, I'm making this movie seem way worse than it actually is. I don't think it's that bad. I don't think it's a bad movie per se, but if we're being honest, if you're going to watch a Hellboy movie, you're probably going to watch one of the Guillermo del Toro ones. Like, those are the fucking best. Why would you watch anything other than those? So that being said, Hellboy, the Crooked Man is not something I would rewatch. Yeah, so maybe we should hang up the old right hand of doom and do this again in another couple of years.